How could I have known that the moment I was about to experience would change my life in ways I never imagined? It all started as an ordinary day. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I walked into that room. The door was slightly ajar, and the moment I saw it, something inside of me shifted. In that very instant, I could have turned around, pretended I hadn't noticed, and left. But I didn't, because the second I realized what I was looking at, I understood that nothing would ever be the same again. Yes, I was the one at fault here. I was the one who made the decision to walk in. I was the one who didn't turn away when I should have. James was out working. The house was still, and the only sound I could hear was a faint noise coming from upstairs. At first, I thought it was just Elliot in his room, lost in his own world like usual. I figured maybe he'd want a coffee or a little conversation, so I decided to go up and check on him. As I walked up the stairs, I tried to figure out where the noise was coming from. When I reached his room, I noticed the door slightly open. I paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and was about to call out to him when I saw him. He was sitting on his bed, his laptop in his lap. The glow from the screen lit up his face, and his hands were moving rapidly across the keys. For a second, I thought he was just watching a movie, maybe something exciting like an action flick. But as I took another step forward, something in my stomach dropped. That was the moment when I realized exactly what Elliot was doing. The reflection on the screen hit me like a cold wave, and I could feel my blood drain from my face. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't wanted to see this. Elliot immediately scrambled to compose himself, hastily lowering the volume on his laptop, but it was already too late. The damage had been done. The second our eyes met, his face turned crimson, his shame evident. I'm sorry," he stammered, his gaze flicking away. I stood frozen, my mind in a whirlwind. I began, but I didn't even know what I was trying to say. A strange warmth spread through me, and though I felt embarrassed, there was something deeper, something I couldn't put into words. I stepped out of the room quickly, my heart racing in my chest. My hands went to my face, and I tried to steady my breath. What was happening to me? What had I just done? Why had I been so careless? But the question kept lingering. Was I the only one to blame here? "Stop it, Lily," I told myself sternly, but the chaos inside me wasn't just triggered by what I had seen. Elliot was 23 now, not a kid anymore. But I was 47. I was a woman who had known her fair share of shame, yet I had never been in a situation like this before. I knew the feeling of shame all too well, but nothing could prepare me for this. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart still pounding. I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to gather myself, when Elliot appeared in the doorway. He adjusted his shirt collar nervously, cleared his throat, and kept his eyes averted. "Lily, I'm really sorry," he began, his voice unsure but sincere. I thought I had closed the door. I quickly shook my head, looking away. No, actually, I should be the one apologizing. I should have knocked before coming in," I said, my voice trembling. I didn't know what else to say. The silence between us stretched on, but this wasn't just any silence. We'd lived in this house for years, but never had we shared this kind of silence, this kind of tension. The weight in the air was palpable. I was desperate to break it. "I'll head downstairs and start making dinner," I said quickly, turning toward the stairs. My voice trembled, but I was trying to keep my composure. Elliot didn't say anything, but I could feel his gaze following me, as if he was piecing something together in his mind. From that moment until the evening, we didn't say a word to each other. No texts, no glances, no small talk. Not a single word passed between us. But the silence between us spoke volumes. It whispered that things would never be the same again. At dinner, we sat at the same table, but neither of us could meet the other's eyes. The only sound was the clinking of silverware on plates. We both knew we needed to speak, to ease the tension. But how could we even begin? That night passed, and then the next day, and the one after that. Everything seemed normal, but it wasn't. The silence only deepened the invisible tension between us. And then one afternoon, Elliot sat down next to me. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, but he clearly wanted to fix things. "Lily, about the other day, I'm really embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I didn't want things to be like this. Please, I don't want this to ruin anything between us," he said, his voice shaky but genuine. I took a deep breath. No matter how strange and unexpected this was, I needed to put him at ease. "Elliot, believe me, I've had my fair share of embarrassing moments," I said, giving him a small, reassuring smile. He smiled back, his tension easing a little, but deep down I knew it wasn't over. It was only just beginning. When he let out a small chuckle, lowering his gaze, he said, "I guess we're even now." I frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" I asked, my curiosity growing. For a moment his expression shifted, like he realized he had said something he shouldn't have. He rubbed the back of his neck, hesitating before continuing. "I've seen you the same way, you just didn't know about it," he muttered, his words barely audible. I froze. The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. "What?" I whispered, barely able to process what he had just confessed. His face flushed, but he continued. "I never told you because I was too embarrassed, but I never forgot about it. It was my little secret, something I couldn't get out of my head." A strange warmth spread through me, something I couldn't explain. His words weren't just a confession. They shattered the last walls between us. I looked at him, and he looked back at me, and suddenly, everything had changed. From that moment on, the air between us felt different. There was no longer any invisible distance between us, no boundary keeping us apart. We started spending so much more time together, sharing moments that seemed insignificant, but only served to heighten the tension. Now, we even sat and watched movies together, something we never did before. There was a silent pull between us, something we both felt but never spoke about. Sometimes, when Elliot's arm brushed against mine or our hands accidentally touched, I felt a strange sensation, something deep and unsettling. But I pushed it away, pretending it didn't matter. One night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was restless, turning over one thought. There was only one thing on my mind. Elliot. I couldn't let this go on. If he had feelings for me, I had to put a stop to it. It had to end before it went any further. With that thought, I got out of bed. My heart was pounding in my chest, but my feet were already carrying me to Elliot's room. His door was slightly open and a dim light shone from inside. When I stepped inside, I saw him lying there, asleep. But it wasn't him that caught my attention. No, it was something else, something I hadn't expected. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I should have turned around immediately, but I didn't. I stood there, trying to process what I was feeling. I pulled back, feeling something stir inside me, but I forced myself to ignore it. I went back to my room and lay down, but everything felt different now. That night, I had no idea just how much more complicated things would become. No matter what I did, the connection with Tyler grew stronger with each passing day, and the lines between us became more blurred. I didn't even realize how far we'd come, but one thing was certain. There was no turning back. Then Tyler came home, stumbling in. He was drunk, knocking things over as he entered. The sounds were loud enough to wake James, but I knew how heavy a sleeper he was, so I quickly left my room and went to Tyler. I hadn't even had time to adjust my clothes before I was standing right in front of him. His eyes were unfocused, but there was a faint smile on his lips. "Lily, are you real?" he slurred, his words muddled by the alcohol. "It's somehow sincere." I took a deep breath and grabbed his arm. Tyler, come on. You can't go upstairs like this. We need to be quiet. But his eyes never left my face. He smiled softly, his gaze trailing over me. You're really beautiful, he murmured. Have you always been this way, or is it just me now noticing? I froze for a second, but then I quickly regained control. Tyler, that's enough, I said. Come to the kitchen. I'll make you some coffee. I led him there, hoping to sober him up a bit, but Tyler's gaze and the words he kept saying were unraveling something inside me too. He sat at the kitchen table while I prepared the coffee. Suddenly, the cup slipped from his hands and spilled onto the counter. Tyler, you need to be more careful, I whispered, rushing to clean it up. But Tyler just smiled, a little more drunkenly this time. Were you always this sweet? He asked. I quickly finished cleaning up. We couldn't stay there much longer. James was asleep upstairs, and with Tyler in this state, we couldn't afford any more noise. All right, we're going upstairs, but be quiet, I warned, slipping my arm around his and leading him toward the stairs. Once in his room, Tyler's movements were even more unsteady. He needed to change, but was too far gone to do it himself. At first, I thought about turning around, but when I saw him struggling to take off his shirt, I instinctively stepped in to help. My fingers touched the buttons of his shirt, and in that moment, the tension between us became palpable. The air felt thick, heavy with something unspoken. I knew exactly what I was doing, but at the same time, I didn't. Tyler paused as he changed, letting his hands fall to his sides, and we locked eyes. I felt my breath quicken. It was so quiet, and everything in the room seemed to stand still, making it harder to breathe. I'm not playing this game anymore, Lily, he said, his voice soft at first, but filled with certainty. I stared at him, unable to look away, my heart racing. What was he trying to say? Are you? He added, his voice deepening. We crossed that line once and you can't forget it. I know you think about it before you sleep. A shiver ran through me, and I took a small step back, but my feet felt stuck to the floor. Tyler, this isn't right, I said, my voice trembling. Tyler smiled slightly, but it wasn't innocent. We passed the point of deciding what's right a long time ago, Lily. Stop lying to yourself. Then he took a step forward, then another, until he was so close that I could feel his breath on my skin. He reached up, his fingers gently tracing my cheek. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Deep down, I knew he was right. And then his lips were on mine. All the silence, all the tension, everything we'd been avoiding, it was all there, in that moment. The thoughts in my head quieted and all my doubts seemed to fade away, because I hadn't resisted Tyler, and the truth was, I never had wanted to. My hands trembled, but I didn't pull away. When I saw the determination in his eyes, I knew there was no more hiding. I swallowed, took a deep breath, and slowly slid the straps of my dress off my shoulders. You're right, Tyler, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Let's not play this game anymore. Without saying anything more, I lay back on the bed, my heart pounding. Turning back was no longer an option. Tyler leaned over me slowly, his eyes meeting mine for a moment before he smiled. Don't be afraid, he said, his voice warm and reassuring. Everything's right. I looked away, a shiver running through me. Even if I couldn't admit it to myself, I knew how long I'd been waiting for this. But still, the words slipped out. Tyler, I'm a little scared, I whispered, my breath uneven. Tyler smiled, ignoring my fear, as if he found it comforting. Maybe it was because of the alcohol, but I wasn't sure. He leaned closer to my ear and whispered, James can't wake up. I knew exactly what he meant. We had to stay quiet. Something huge stirred inside me, and I struggled to keep my body from making any noise. Tyler watched me, his eyes filled with understanding. He whispered something reassuring, and I closed my eyes. My hands gripped the sheets tightly and my body trembled, spasming. I covered my mouth to stifle any sound. Tyler, so drunk that nothing seemed to matter to him, continued. The excitement, the intensity of everything happening, and the feeling of something inevitable. It was overwhelming. He let go completely, and the heat inside me was too much. I quickly laid him back in his bed and covered him up, locking the door behind me. I needed to take a shower to clear my mind, but I had no idea what had just happened or what would come next. As I stood under the water, I felt a mix of nervousness and calm. By the time I got out, I felt strangely clear-headed. Oddly enough, I wasn't angry with myself. My body felt as relaxed as my mind. I dressed in silence, walked to my bed, and lay down, trying to pretend nothing had changed. But the truth was, this wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was more than that. And it wasn't going to stay simple. It couldn't. Bigger, more intense things were coming, and eventually, James would find out everything. This story wasn't over yet. Please remember to leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to my channel for additional content.